I know the farmers and ranchers who are experiencing extreme pain during this economic crisis with inflation. I'm Tina Cannon, and I ask for your support.
Thank you, Tina. Now we'll hear from Blake Moore.
Thank you, Thomas, Andrew, and Tina. It's great to be on the stage. I look forward to the conversation. I look forward to and I'm excited for any time to be able to share my vision for our state, for our great nation, and also quickly to Jane and my boys. It's been an amazing experience and so much support. And Jane knows that so much of what I'm doing is for the future of our boys. My time in office has boiled down to three major things. First, and the most important aspect of what I've been up to for the last 18 months is pushing back as hard as possible against Biden's horrific policies. Speaker Pelosi and President Biden have put our country on the wrong track with simple policy decisions that is affecting every single American. The second thing in this political climate, however, is to find a way to still be productive for my constituents, and I've delivered on that. And lastly, I've developed an enormous, direction on how we go about it. It's what got me into the race the first time, and to figure out our debt and deficit issues. Not just why it's the case, but what we can actually do about it. Look forward to the conversation.
Thanks, Blake. Andrew Badger.
My name is Andrew Badger. I'm running for Utah's 1st Congressional District. I'm a 5th-generation Utahn of pioneer ancestry. Utah molded me into the man I am today. It's because of these values I later served our country in Afghanistan. I'm proud to earn the trust of their local community, reflected in the fact that we won the state convention with nearly 60% of the delegate vote. I'm running for U.S. Congress because I believe our country is in a state of crisis, and that our current representatives are not acting like it. The question before us today isn't one necessarily of goals, but of means. Do we take the old GOP establishment approach, go along to get along, compromise at any cost? Or do we take the America First approach, where we boldly fight for the vision of our country, where we're willing to work together with others, but not at the expense of sacrificing our values? That is the question before you today. I believe we should take the America First approach. I look forward to introducing myself to you today, and I hope to earn your vote. If you want to learn more about my campaign, you can visit my website, badger2022.com. Thank you.
All right, we've heard the opening statements. We'll go straight now to the questions. And Blake, you'll be first as we rotate around, with Tina having gone first with opening statements. It's hard for one person in a body of 435 to have much influence. Are there coalitions that you would serve or organize to take a lead on key issues in Congress?
Yeah, absolutely. And what I'm trying to do is actually build it from the Utah level. It's not just a sort of campaign slogan to take Utah values back to Washington. It is a great campaign slogan, but when you can actually implement something is really important. One of the key things, and I mentioned it in my opening statement, is to develop a debt and deficit task force right here in Utah with a group of about 12 individuals, extremely credible, sound voices from across the industry. Put together a list of recommendations. This isn't even a part of any particular committee that I'm on. This is just something that I'm very passionate about. We put that recommendation list together. This talks about why our mandatory spending has grown from 30% to 65% of it now, what we can do about some of our discretionary spending, and how we go about battling this going forward. So these recommendations are things that we need to take back to Washington and make sure that we establish a future. So there's a group that I'm on. It's headed up by Jody Arrington out of Texas, and I've joined on with this to be able to make this fight an actual reality and influence leadership when we take back the majority in the fall to make sure that we can not miss this opportunity and go after it.
All right, thank you. We'll now go to Andrew Badger. Same question.
I think that the reason why we're in the state of our country is right now is because the current Republicans have been compromising our values. They're not fighting for us. If we elect the same type of Republicans as Paul Ryan in 2018, 2017, that's what we're going to get, the same results. Nothing is going to happen. We have people like Mitt Romney who say he trusts the president, who supports his infrastructure bill. Where are the results from that infrastructure bill? One of the reasons why I decided to run is because I found that our representatives aren't listening to us. They're not fighting for the things that are important to us. They're not fighting for things like ending the vaccine mandates, for empowering parents in education, and for securing our elections. These are the things that we need representatives fighting for. And I look forward to working together with a broad spectrum of colleagues back in Washington. But I would support the House Freedom Caucus. They're the most conservative bloc in Congress, and together we can have strength in numbers. Because again, if we get the Paul Ryan approach, we're going to have the Paul Ryan results, and that's what we have to avoid. I believe also that we have to be willing to work with the Democrats, but the compromise has been a one-way street for too long. It's time for them to start compromising with us. And that's what I think we should be fighting for.
Thank you. Tina.
This is one of the things that sets me apart from my two opponents. I've spent my career in federal taxation. I understand the processes, the structure that is already there. I know how to quickly turn that around and how it can be immediately changed so that we can offer aid and help to small businesses who are already suffering. 60% of our economy is based on small business. And this week you heard President Biden talk about overturning the Trump tax cuts. That will devastate small businesses, absolutely devastate them. We need to be able to know how the structure works, what the unintended consequences are when these policies are implemented, and understand how to turn it around. I've spent my career doing budgeting. I understand we don't have a revenue problem in the federal government. We have a spending problem. And since I understand budgeting and revenue and how those things need to align, I'm uniquely qualified to bring those solutions that we need immediately to bring positive solutions and positive conservative solutions to Washington, D.C.
Thank you. You all came in under time. This is going to be the easiest moderated debate ever. They gave me the right one, so thank you. The next question will go to you, Andrew. The question is, what is the most important issue specific to Congressional District 1?
I think one of the most specific congressional issues is our foreign policy and our national security. Because we have Hill Air Force Base in our community, we have our service members in our community who are potentially being deployed abroad and fighting in wars. And right now, Congress is not doing its job in providing that oversight for this Biden administration's reckless foreign policy. Under the Constitution, it's the Congress's job to declare war, not the president's. And what we're doing right now in Ukraine specifically is we're escalating this situation without any strategic goal, without any oversight of that goal. And we're just spent $40 billion, including from our Utah delegation, to send to Ukraine while we have troubles here at home. Well, people in the 1st District aren't able to afford gasoline. Well, they have trouble, worried about what their children are going to learn in school. Well, they don't have the confidence like they should in our elections. These are the issues that are important to the 1st District, and most importantly, is avoiding a war in Ukraine. And we have this, again, a reckless administration. We have no oversight by Congress. We spent $40 billion in this conflict while we have these issues at home. The highest responsibility, I believe, for any representative is the decision to go to war. When we send our young boys and our young women abroad to fight for a conflict, we cannot repeat the mistakes that we did over the last 20 years. I believe that's the highest responsibility. Having served in Afghanistan as a civilian intelligence officer, where I supported our military, I think I have a unique experience in that qualification because I've actually seen war before. I want to make sure that we avoid it in the future.
Same question to you, Tina.
Without a doubt, the most pressing issue affecting northern Utah and all of the country right now is inflation. And it's inflation caused by our own government. We have too much money chasing too few goods. And that's creating a situation where Carrie Lee out in West Haven is making a choice whether or not she's going to put her child into a soccer tournament or whether she's going to pay for groceries. These are real issues affecting our families here at home. We need to reverse these policies. All we need to do is have this administration put it back the way they found it. Let's go back to the Trump-era policies on energy. Let's increase the supply of oil. That brings down that price of all of the products that are made from oil as well, and we start bringing real solutions to the table. But if you're asking what a unique part of the district is, it is the aerospace industry that is part of Hill Air Force Base. And I know from the Rocket Garden at Promontory to the Space Dynamics Lab at Utah State to the Utah Training Range and testing, right back to the Hill Air Force Base. It is more than just the companies. It is a combination of the civilian contractors, the military, and the personnel who work to make Hill Air Force Base the most efficient base in the United States. And I'm proud to represent that district.
Same question, please.
Excellent. I've spent 18 months, nearly 18 months, in town halls across the district. And I'll just agree. In the short term, it's inflation. In the long term, their biggest concern is our debt, right, and how this plays out. The fact that we can't get our deficit back to where we did in the late 90s, and why Americans, they don't have any more hope that we can actually do that, or that balloon's out of the way. In February, right after President Biden, after the Senate flipped to Democrat, President Biden is sworn into office, within like a week, Congressional Democrats put a $1.9 trillion bill on the table and passed it along party line votes. It was an obvious no for every single one of us back there because we knew the outcomes that would come place. But as I've talked to constituents, it's gone from, why in the world would they spend $2 trillion on a pretend COVID bill? And now what you see is Larry Summers, President Obama's economic advisor, sit there and say it was the American Rescue Plan that created this inflation. $1.9 trillion with no offset spending whatsoever that was masqueraded as a COVID bill directly led to suppressing our workforce, creating monetary supply and stimulus money that we don't need. Everybody that got a $1,400 check is reeling with an extra $700 of Costco bills every single month, month over month. That is the kind of policies that are putting us on the wrong track, and we have to get back from that.
Great, thank you. We now go to a recorded question from Jason Williams with KVNU Radio in Logan.
With some parts of the district predicted to nearly double in population over the next few decades, rising challenges of air quality, open space, housing, the effects of climate change, and our water situation, it's safe to say the challenges ahead are going to become more complex and even more urgent to residents of the district. As a representative in Congress, what do you feel Congress can do to best help Utah and the 1st Congressional District rise to meet these challenges?
That question goes to Tina Cannon.
Look, I've been a local elected official over land use and growth, and I have great respect for our local elected officials, and that's why I want the federal government to stay out of the way, because this is a local decision and these are local problems, and anytime the federal government gets into these issues, they make it worse. But there are some things that we can do as the federal delegation. There are 150,000 to 200,000 acres of BLM land within municipal boundaries in Utah. There's another 600 to 800,000 of BLM land within a mile of those municipal boundaries. Think what that does to increase the supply of land in Utah and add the ability for those municipalities to have the decision of what to do with that land. This is a process that's been worked on for the last 18 years with Rob Bishop as our representative. And we've already seen the success of turning that land back over in Park City, in Hyde Park, in Manaway. And it's been amazing to see what these communities are able to do with that increase in supply in land. And that's what we can do as a federal delegation, to work to give Utah's lands back to the control of Utah.
Thank you. Same question on growth to you, Blake Moore.
Yeah, absolutely. The secret's out on Utah. Lowest unemployment, best economy in the nation, fastest growing state. This has got to be a top priority for every single person involved in any decision-making capability. The two major issues are water and housing. And if, working with Wasatch Front Regional Council, working with municipalities, we lean in and we get engaged with all of these local leaders, and we assist where it's possible, right? This is a local issue. And building transportation opportunities, stronger infrastructure, and identifying one of the major issues with housing and making sure that we have the supply without adding to the congestion are the key framework that we're using as we go about these discussions. I was just in West Box Elder with a whole bunch of dry farmers. And hopefully the precipitation we got over the weekend is going to help a little bit of that. But we have a major wheat shortage that's going to happen, and it's going to be imminent. And there's going to be some pain going on with some of our food shortages coming up. We have to figure out a better solution for our water, and it's going to take all hands on deck. We've engaged. We've been able to, when the state legislature asked us to help with some of the issues that's going on with Great Salt Lake, we put together actual legislation that's going to pass here soon, Saline Lakes Ecosystem Act. And these are just ways that we have to collaborate and work together, and we've had an incredible record these last 18 months.
Thank you. Andrew Badger.
It's really simple. We have to put the power back into our local government, where we have officials who are held accountable by the local government, by the local citizens that they serve. Right now, we have vast government overreach, overextending its constitutional authority. I have a friend, Phil Lyman, serving in the State House here. And he tells stories about what the Bureau of Land Management is doing to terrorizing these communities down south, and just epitomizes the government overreach that we have in the state. I think there are three key issues we need to focus on. One, housing. I'd be proud to support the Houses Act put forward by Senator Mike Lee, where we need to turn over these unlimited tract lands to developers to develop single-house homes that should be bought by American families. Second, in terms of water, we need to protect the States' Rights Water Protection Act, make sure that the president can't delegate these national reserves and include that water. We also need to pass the More PILT Act. We need to have these tax returns going to the actual local community like the federal government promised us. And finally, thirdly, we need to pass the Utah Lands State Sovereignty Act. Utah needs to have a say, and Congress needs to have a say when this administration or any president tries to designate national land, state land in our state. Utah land belongs to Utah's families. That's what we have to fight for. Finally, we have to ban communist China from buying our farmland. This is absolutely insane. China has already been at war with us for almost 20 years, and we're letting them buy our strategic assets. We have to build national resiliency, not just here in Utah, but across the country. That includes energy independence, that includes securing our food supply chain, and that includes making sure that we're not selling our strategic assets, especially in things like lithium, nickel, that are going to be used for batteries, to China, who's our adversary.
Thank you. Andrew, this question will go to Andrew Badger as well. Hill Air Force Base is the second largest base by population and geographical size. The base is also the single largest site employer in the state of Utah. With the economic impact of more than $3 billion annually, you all agree the importance of Hill Air Force Base. There are many things we could discuss about the base here today, but I want to focus on housing. Housing on Hill Air Force Base is not adequate for the demand and is in drastic need of updating. How would you specifically go about solving the housing problem for our service women and men?
Well, I think we need to reduce regulations and restrictions as much as possible. We need to open it up to more competition for our housing. I think one of the issues we have is there's a monopoly on the private housing. I've lived on a base in Germany while serving with the DIA, and a lot of times that housing was run down. It wasn't well kept because we're basically awarding these contracts to these entities that have no competition. So I think we need to streamline the process more. We need to have more private sector competition. Also, I think we need to put our Hill Air Force service members at the front of our minds. You know, I have a lot of friends serving in the Air Force who've reached out to me worried about the vaccine mandate, you know, and they're still being kicked out of the military because of this vaccine mandate, because our current representatives aren't standing up and aren't fighting for them. And I think we have to take into account housing. We also have to take into account that our service members have a right to medical freedom just as much as we do. And I think, again, thirdly, and not to forget, you know, our foreign policy also has to be prudent. We can't get into these forever wars abroad because our service members here in Utah are going to have to be deployed to fight them.
Thank you. Tina Cannon, same question on housing at Hill Air Force Base.
So I think this is an issue that Blake Moore understands very well because the Boyer Hill housing contract benefits his father-in-law as a private public partnership at Hill Air Force Base. That means that the increase in value on that contract doesn't go to the service member who is renting that house or leasing that property while they're in that facility. It's going to the private owner, Boyer Hill. And so when the airman moves on, they don't have the benefit of the gain and the appreciation in the property in Utah the way regular citizens would. This is where, having been part of an Air Force family and having a husband who'd moved 18 times before he graduated from high school with his father in the Air Force, I know this issue, and I know how hard it is for them to find housing on base and off of base. This is a federal issue in helping them with understanding what the cost of living is in Utah compared to other bases across the country. And maybe there is a cost of living increase that needs to happen so they can afford to have options off base if they're limited in what their selection is on base. That way they are able to appreciate in the market as Utah's economy continues to grow. But these are discussions that need to be worked on not just at a federal level, but within cooperation with federal, state, and local authorities. Fortunately, I've served on all of the Wasatch Front Regional Council committees, so I know these issues well, and I know the partnerships that are there between the state, local communities.
Thank you, Tina Cannon. Blake Moore, same question.
Thank you. The actually on-base living arrangements are overprescribed. They provide, there's an enormous amount of positive feedback for what goes on with our Hill Air Force Base on base. The issue is that we don't have enough of that, and that there needs to be more off-base potential housing. So two things that we can be doing on this. Enhanced use leases, and what I just recently met with Mayor Shepard about. So Mayor Shepard came to our office with an awesome idea, and I won't lay the whole thing out here. It might drown on and on a little bit. But we have airmen that are putting 4 people into a 2-bedroom apartment. They're crashing on couches. They don't have enough of their BAH, which is their housing allowance, to be able to afford the rapid increase in prices that are going along all along the Wasatch Front. So it's addressing the BAH. It measures into the National Defense Authorization Act. I serve on Armed Services Committee, so we're highly involved in everything related to what our Hill Air Force Base needs are. We've had an incredibly productive, been lauded from every stakeholder about the amount of time and presence that we've created for here. The option that can go on in places like Clearfield is they can actually build an apartment complex and get it to the pricing levels, and if you go through Congress in the right way to make sure you have the incentives in place, we can relieve some of that pressure that these airmen don't have to double and triple up in these apartment complexes, and there's real solutions on the table. It's been one of the best parts when you have individuals like Mayor Shepard come directly to our office and we get starting on some of these plans.
Okay. Any rebuttals on any of that? I'll give you an opportunity. It sounds like we're all moving in the right direction. Okay, here we go. The next question deals with gasoline prices. Under the Biden administration, Americans are grappling with fuel prices that are reaching near record levels almost daily. These high gas prices affect nearly every sector of the U.S. economy. What do you see as the cause of the high gas prices, and what can you do to help lower them? First, Blake Moore, excuse me.
Thank you. I wish we could pull up my House floor speech that I gave just days after President Biden did the secretarial order and canceled the Keystone Pipeline. When he rules by executive action, it destroys any chance for good outcomes with respect to policy. So he cancels any oil and leasing and permitting on federal lands and federal waters. The reason our gas prices are what they are is solely on the shoulders of President Biden. And that's been the most clear. Americans are now getting it, right? And we'll talk about that throughout today's debate. But when you put in policy that will disincentivize capital improvements, that will demonize and complete an industry that during the Trump administration, and candidly, even during the Obama administration, Obama never took these kind of gross, hugely liberal efforts to kill the oil and gas industry. You never even saw that from any other president before. This has been an immediate war on American industry. In 2019, we were net exporters. Americans are looking at us and say, I am paying double, triple the cost because Joe Biden has an initiative that he won't even clearly articulate. He tries to say he's going to save the planet by 2030, but he has no plan on how he's going to actually go about doing it, and it's causing major problem with every single American. We've spoken out against this, not just now that it's popular, but from day one of President Biden's time in office.
Thank you. Andrew Badger.
I mean, the facts speak for themselves. Gasoline prices are soaring. American families are having a hard time paying for fuel at the pump. This is one of the main reasons why we're having inflation. When fuel costs go up, food costs go up. This is a huge challenge. I think there are a couple things. Obviously, the Biden administration needs to open up these pipelines, not only the Keystone Pipeline, Dakota Pipeline. We need to get these leases back in order, start drilling again in the Anbar region. And we need to make sure that we actually become not just energy independent, but energy dominant. Another key thing is ESG scores, environmental social governance scores. This is how the capital banking industry is basically blackmailing the fossil fuel industry. I've spoken to a lot of people in the fossil fuel industry. They're telling me that they can't get the capital from these banks because their ESG score will get lowered, and thereby, their drilling leases are going up. They don't have the capital for these infrastructure, for paying for their personnel. This is one of the main reasons why gas prices have gone up. This Biden administration is lying about this Putin price hike. That's surely one variable, but this is a multi-variable issue. And we need to fight back against ESG scores. We need to instill the responsibility within shareholders to have fiduciary responsibility in order to sue these companies if they abuse the ESG scores. We also need conservatives who aren't going to buy into this climate change narrative. A lot of Utahns, led by John Curtis and joined by Blake Moore, are part of the Conservative Climate Caucus. Blake, one of the first lobbying groups you met with was a climate change lobbyist group in Park City. And we buy into this narrative that this climate change hysteria, which is different from environmental stewardship, and we go along, we pass these 1.5 trillion omnibus bills, which are loaded with climate change, these Green New Deal bills, and we have to be willing to fight back, and we have to stop passing this crazy legislation and enabling the Biden administration to push forward this blackmailing of the American people.
Okay, we'll go to Blake Moore for rebuttal, and then we'll come back to Tina Cannon to answer the question.
Yeah, the actual strongest argument against Biden's war on oil and gas has been to be able to highlight the good work that we've been doing. And right here in Utah, we invested in Tier 3 gas. We spent billions of dollars to invest in Tier 3 refineries because that strengthens our argument. It makes it a more credible argument to support American energy independence. That the Utah delegations on that caucus actually is the largest Republican caucus in the entire group. And the reason the reason is it's the strongest credible argument to go and support American energy independence.
Tina Cannon.
Now that we've all covered it, we all agree Biden needs to put it back where he found it, and we get back to where we were 18 months ago with energy independence. We all agree on this. But understand what this is doing to Utah's farmers, ranchers, dairymen, families. If we want to keep China from buying farms and ranches in the United States, we need to make sure our farmers and ranchers aren't going broke trying to pay their fuel bills. They can't. Their fertilizer prices have doubled. Their cost of diesel has more than doubled. They can't feed their families, let alone the rest of Utah, when prices go like this. It is yet to hit in the grocery stores the way that our farmers, ranchers, and dairymen are feeling it now. We need to act. Not wait, not write a letter. We need to start acting now and holding this administration accountable for the actions they've taken to destroy the livelihoods of our farmers, ranchers, and dairymen.
Thank you. Any other rebuttals on this particular issue? You've had one, just 1 second there.
You didn't answer the bill why you voted for a $1.5 trillion omnibus bill, which was loaded with Green New Deal pork.
What bill was that?
The omnibus bill last.
I didn't vote for the omnibus bill.
Yeah, you did.
I voted for the defense. There was two bills. I voted for the defense-related one, not the 1.5.
So you didn't vote for the 1.5 trillion.
I voted for the defense-related one.
Heritage Foundation disagrees. So
Heritage Foundation criticized. There was two separate bills. Every House member in Utah, the delegation voted for the defense-related one, but they still dinged it because they felt like when it went over to the Senate. So this is the legislative process. When it goes over to the Senate, it became one bill, but on the House side, we only voted for the security one. We did not vote for the additional appropriations bill. So it's a very clear definition. We communicated that to the Heritage Foundation. They thought once the bill was ended and through the Senate, if you voted on any of it, I support our military. I represent Hill Air Force Base. I have worked tirelessly and spent countless hours at Hill Air Force Base making sure that I'm there to support them. That's what I voted for. So.
And you also voted for that defense bill, which included funding the vaccine.
This is getting exciting. I like it. But the next rebuttal is going to go to Tina Cannon.
So this is why it matters that you understand how government works. The longest-serving member of the House, Congressman Dingell, said, if you let me control the process and I let you control the policy, I will beat you every time. And that's what they did. They controlled the process. You take it along. You think you're doing something good on policy, but because the process gets you in the end, if you didn't stop it at the start, you are voting for an omnibus bill. That's how this works. That's how this works. Understanding the process is just as important as understanding the policy.
Well, okay, we're going to do. Hold on. We're going to do one more rebuttal from each of you. So get ready. Hold on. We're going to go one more rebuttal from Blake.
That would be great. We could end the debate today.
Hold on for 1 second. I actually really like this energy, so no problem. Keep it up. But we got to do it in order so that people can hear what you're saying. So one more rebuttal from Blake Moore, and then we'll come back to one more from Andrew Badger, and then we're going to move on.
Yeah, I understand.
Unless you want one more, Tina.
I've been in the thick of the process. On June 22nd, that's my birthday, everybody, I will spend I will be in committee for 18 hours in the Armed Services Committee room, going and fighting for the priorities that are most important to our national security and to Hill Air Force Base. Countless hours. That has been done for decades in this district, okay? So when the security bill comes up and the NDAA is on the table, that is something I support. The entire House delegation supported it that way. I did not vote for Democrats' appropriations bills. Thank you.
Andrew Badger.
I mean, you were saying all year you were going to vote for this infrastructure bill. At the last minute, you decided not to because you didn't get some assurances on the Build Back Better bill. That's an interview you've put forward. And I want to talk about the National Defense Authorization Act because we had conservative Republicans in the House Freedom Caucus who were not willing to fund that, vote for that NDAA until they removed the vaccine mandate from it and defunded it, like Mike Lee sought to do with the continuing resolution. We had our representatives who didn't support them in that cause. And so I would argue that you haven't been fighting for the Hill Air Force Base like you should have.
Final rebuttal, Tina Cannon, if you'd like.
This is how they get you every time, is they put the defense spending into an omnibus bill, and then they tell you, in order to support the military, you have to vote for the incredible increase in spending with omnibus. This is part of the problem, and if you're not willing to acknowledge it, fight against it, and speak out loudly against that process to change the process, then you're not really representing even Hill Air Force Base or the voters who are paying that bill.
If you're just joining us, we are about halfway through a very heated debate featuring Republican Party candidates for the U.S. 1st Congressional District primary election race. I'm Thomas Wright, and I'm moderating today's exchange. As a reminder, Utah's primary election is coming up on June 28th. Candidates Andrew Badger, Tina Cannon, and Blake Moore are on that ballot. If you are an active registered voter, you should start receiving your ballots next week. Unaffiliated voters or people who would like to register to vote can affiliate with the Republican Party right up until Election Day. You can contribute your comments and questions to the live broadcast on social media by using the hashtag #UTDebates. Now, I can't wait to get back to the questions. The next question, I think the audience agrees. This question will go to Tina Cannon. Grade the U.S. involvement in the Ukraine-Russia conflict, or as I like to say, Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine. And how has the U.S. been too involved, or have they been not enough involved?
Grade our involvement? I'd have to give us a C. I think and here's why. Every person in the United States feels empathy for Ukraine. All of us do. But anytime you're using taxpayer funding, and it's not $40 billion, it's $54 billion that we have sent to Ukraine. And this last set of money that was sent without any oversight. This is why Mike Lee voted against it. Anytime you are appropriating federal dollars, taxpayer dollars, you are taking that from hard-working Americans, small businesses, large businesses across the board. And they deserve to have oversight over that funding. We are giving a blank check to Ukraine without knowing what they're going to do with it. You cannot do that. You cannot do that with taxpayer money.
Great answer. Thank you. The next will be Blake Moore.
Thanks. We're in this mess because of the weakness that President Biden showed with Afghanistan. It's one of the most heartbreaking things. It infuriated us. Our team worked overtime to get people out. And we were the first office, I was the first member of Congress, Senate and House, to enact the Afghanistan Accountability Act. That led to Putin looking back and saying, Obama, easy, go to Crimea. Biden's in office, let's go. I pushed for earlier sanctions. I pushed for supply lines when they were open to provide. The $40 billion, it's an easy thing to be able to talk about from the sidelines. But when you're in this role, you have to stand on your own 2 feet. Right? Nearly half of that money is coming back to replenish our own Department of Defense. Again, I'm very strong support of our military. So there's a replenishment aspect to that. Then there's a matching aspect to that. This fight against Putin, he's the aggressor. It has to stay in Ukraine. The second that trips over into Poland, into any of our Article 5, he violates Article 5, we're in a fight that we do not want to be in. We're putting boots on the ground, our servicemen and women at risk, and we're going to be spending a ton more money. But we've got to be able to support Ukraine to be able to go back and fight the aggressor in Putin. And we've seen that. For years leading up to this, we've been training their military, right? We support them now. We save countless dollars, and we save lives, particularly with ours, but also our NATO allies.
Great. Thank you. Andrew Badger.
Over the last 20 years, we've learned lessons the hard way. In Iraq, Afghanistan, we didn't have an exit strategy. We didn't have a definition of victory. And that's the same mistake we're making right now with the Ukrainian crisis. We all empathize with what the Ukrainian people are going through. We want to resolve this situation. But fundamentally, it's political. It has to be resolved diplomatically. The challenge as well is it comes with costs and benefits. Right now, our representatives are sending $40 billion to Ukraine with no oversight, with no definition of victory. This administration has gone through mission creep. We went through defending the territorial integrity of Ukraine to now trying to weaken and defeat Russia. This is the recipe for a global war, and we have to start putting America first. We're shipping in baby formula from Europe while sending billions of dollars to Europe to fight this war, again, with no oversight, no definition of victory. Meanwhile, we have limited resources, and we have to focus on our #1 geostrategic threat, which is communist China. And a lot of this does come down to accountability. The Biden administration had the most disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. Having served there, it impacted me in particular. And having worked with a lot of Afghans who trusted us, we not only left Americans behind enemy lines, but not only abandoned our allies, we left behind billions of dollars worth of weapons and equipment. And no one's been held accountable. Blake, you passed a censure resolution against President Trump. Why not put a censure resolution against President Biden at the very least? So we can have some accountability. There has been no censure resolution, and he should be impeached for what happened in Afghanistan.
Blake Moore for rebuttal.
By far more. I was the first member to put an Afghanistan accountability that will address these items.
That's not a censure resolution.
So, again, every aspect of Biden's policies we've pushed back against strongly, credibly. So when we take the majority, we can control all this message. We can control the process. We can control how we go about making these decisions. And to say that it's all that money is going to Ukraine, like I said, nearly half of it was replenishing our own military, right? This is, I did not invade Ukraine. This was not something that was expected. He saw weakness, and we're dealing with it the very best way we can.
Okay, the next question will go to Andrew Badger. What is your opinion on federally funded infrastructure projects? Are there projects in Utah you plan to fight on acquiring federal funding for?
I think one of the issues is when we have more federal funding, it creates more problems. We have less accountability. We are less effective in spending that money. And the problem is, again, we're going back to inflation. One of the main reasons why we have inflation is because we've been printing money we don't have. Congress needs to pass a balanced budget act. We also need to work with passing infrastructure bills when we actually have Republicans in office. I mean, President Trump put forward an infrastructure bill in 2018. We're actually focused on hard infrastructure, and Republicans shot it down because they said we didn't have enough money for it. So I think there are limited roles for federal Congress in supporting infrastructure. Obviously, one of them would be securing our border, finishing the wall. Other things we need to do is improving the efficiency of irrigation, dams, that type of thing, especially here in Utah. But first and foremost, this money should be spent at the local level where we have that oversight and where we can make sure it's spent most effectively and most efficiently. I mean, again, Mitt Romney said he trusted President Biden and supported this $1.5 trillion infrastructure bill. Blake also said that he was going to support it before he didn't vote for it at the very end. And where has this money gone to? You know, I would ask Mitt Romney, where is the benefit of this money that we've spent, again, that we don't have? So again, in summary, while I think we do have limited areas for infrastructure spending, especially on irrigation, water infrastructure, especially on finishing the wall, we can't just write a blank check for Washington. It's causing inflation, and it has no oversight, and it's just leading to inefficiency.
Thank you. Tina Cannon, then we'll come to you.
So the federal government has control over federal projects. And in Utah, I've served on the Wasatch Front Regional Council Commission, and that is a transportation organization. So you have to think of, especially in the 1st Congressional District, projects that are on I-84 and I-15. And right now, with the growth at Hill Air Force Base, you are seeing a massive amount of traffic along I-15 right along Hill Air Force Base. That is, it directly correlates to the new program at Northrop Grumman that is going to be $13.3 billion over the next 9 years. We have to be able to recognize that impact and be able to move on that federal impact from that program. Other than that, the federal government needs to stay as far away from Utah, but it does control 66% of our land. When we talk about water, the Bureau of Reclamation is going to control whether or not we put another reservoir in. So understanding what the federal government's role is, what the local government's role is, and what the state role is in between those is a very important part of the experience that I bring to this position.
Blake Moore.
I never realized I wasn't prepared to be criticized twice for a bill I'd never voted for and did not vote for. The infrastructure bill, I voted no on the infrastructure bill. Let's be very clear about that. Engaging in the process, and if that was something we could do to keep us away from the Build Back Better, infrastructure is a positive investment, and it typically in our nation's history has always been a positive investment. We just saw the Navajo Nation get a water project. I did not vote for that bill, though. There wasn't 3 more brave Democrats that would be willing to buck the trend. That's what's going on right now. Speaker Pelosi has an unbelievable ability to line up her entire conference behind any initiative that she wants. And when they got this, the majority in the House, the White House, and the Senate, they put on the most progressive liberal push that we've ever seen in our nation. That's why I remain focused on making sure that we're in the best position to win that back. Okay, so federal funding. I'm glad you bring up a lot of these topics. We've actually secured a lot of this type of work that goes to small, targeted, really effective approaches with interchanges, with water treatment plants across the 1st District. We've engaged and worked with every single municipality and county commission to know that. In the Uinta Basin has been one of the very best yields that we've been able to have to get really good projects for them. There's a lot of need there. Hill Air Force Base, that's federal funding. It's crucial to our district. So we have to be able to focus the projects with Northrop Grumman and everything you're talking about. Those are our #1 priorities. They're going into our defense bill requests, and that we'll be watching over the next month. And on June 22nd, again, everybody's welcome to watch. It's like 18 hours of debate going on and amendments. Welcome to see the productive work that we're going to do.
Rebuttal?
I mean, if you would have gotten those assurances on the Build Back Better bill from those 3 Democrats, would you have supported the infrastructure bill?
Anything to get rid of the Build Back Better bill. There would have been probably 80 Republicans.
So you would have supported the infrastructure bill?
Per my leadership, there would have been probably 80 to 100 Republicans. If we could avoid the Build Back Better, infrastructure's a solid investment. I didn't like the infrastructure bill because it added $256 billion in offset spending. And that's something that ultimately kept me away from it for the time being. But with what Joe Manchin was able to do, they actually kept the Build Back Better plan at bay. That was a huge victory for our nation.
Why not wait until Republicans are in Congress so that we can pass the infrastructure bill?
Well, this never works if you wait for your turn, apparently. So there's the problem with, we've added $10 trillion in 2 years to our national debt. Build Back Better was a great idea before we had massive stimulus. At this point, Build Back Better or any other big spending program is only going to add to the pain of inflation. That's the reality that we're in. That's the experience of an accountant who will tell you, we have a spending problem. We have great projects that could have been done. They can't be done now. We've spent that money other places.
Final rebuttal on this, and then we'll move on.
Build Back Better was never a good idea. Like that bill had government programs that would have lasted
You
decades.
supported it.
Right? I had nothing to do with Build Back Better. There's an infrastructure bill and there's a Build Back Better bill. Those are two completely different bills. Build Back Better is fundamentally different than infrastructure. So I don't know what, like, I'm a little confused right now.
You supported the infrastructure one, not the Build Back Better.
I did not support the infrastructure deal.
Yeah.
Remember, I voted against it. I
If
voted
three
no on the
Democrats
infrastructure
voted
bill,
for it, you
and the
said you
Build
would vote
Back
for it.
Better bill was squashed. Right? So those are. I know there's a lot going on this last year, but I've been in the thick of it, and I am very proud of my record.
And the
I voted
results
no
speak
on
for it.
infrastructure,
That's the job.
and Build
That's
Back
the
Better
job.
was never a good idea.
We now go to another reporter question. Here is Charlie Schill from the Cache Valley Daily.
Utah is in the midst of a historic drought. What can the federal government do to help us cope with water shortages short term?
This question goes to Blake Moore.
Great. We should be passing the Saline Lakes Ecosystems Bill that the state legislature came to us. State legislature's got a strong focus on what's going on with our drought and our water, and they approached us, and we were able to get a bill, get solid policy to be able to. This is going to inform with a data-driven approach on what we can be doing with this problem that we have, right? We have upstream issues, we have downstream issues, and we've got potential water through the Bureau of Reclamation, identifying what we need to do with respect to another reservoir. There's also a project going on in Summit County. There's a lot of good work that's going on. We engage tremendously with our local partners. Our state legislature is heavily focused on this. You know, water is the limiting factor. Water is what's causing so much angst from our agricultural industry, that and the gas prices. And we need good, solid American policy that doesn't hamstring us like everything that President Biden and Speaker Pelosi have put forward this year. And we'll just continue to navigate this and find really solid, thoughtful options to be able to address all these issues that are going to come up in Utah as our growth continues.
Mr. Badger.
I mean, Thomas, water is critical to Utah families. I have a lot of family friends who are in the farming industry, and they're really hurting right now. You know, without water, we can't have a successful, vibrant agricultural market in Utah. Actually, 40% of our agriculture industry is exported abroad. You know, this is critical for Utah's economy. And one of the issues is we're having, again, the federal government overreach and, you know, tap into our water rights reserves. I think that's why I would support the the state's Water Rights Protection Act, where we prevent a president from unilaterally signing an executive order where he can declare these water reserves part of these, National Lands Acts. And that's, I think, critical for keeping the federal government out of Utah. And we also need, I think, have limited resource, efficient, effective spending in infrastructure, especially on irrigation, damming. Those type of things can help us. But ultimately, this issue is going to be solved by our great state representatives, and we have to do everything we can to empower them to make these decisions because they're held accountable to the local community. So really, I view my job as always running interference as much as possible to keep the federal government out of it, and also to get back to an America First platform where we could have spent $40 billion here at home and building our own infrastructure and taking care of our own American families instead of wasting it abroad.
Tina Cannon is next.
So one of the little-told stories about the Bureau of Reclamation is that when we were going into a drought year, they insisted that we release more water than we should have out of our reservoirs. And that's what happens when you have a D.C. bureaucrat who is monitoring Utah's water. They don't understand the climate. They don't understand the water systems in Utah. So as much as possible, this decision needs to come back to local control and local influence on how we deal with water in the West. This comes for the fight for control of Utah's public lands, and Utah should have this input and management over its public lands and over its water. More than anything, I respect local government because I've been there. I've been on the front lines as we've made these decisions with land use in a system that was over-allocated on the water. This is a real issue in our communities, and we need to start addressing it before it gets to the point of a system going dry. Again, local control.
Thank you for those great responses. We're going to go to a different question now. Within the last few weeks, there have been multiple mass shootings in our country, including 19 children being massacred in a classroom in Texas. How can we prevent mass shootings in our country? Tina Cannon, will you go first this time, please?
So you're not human if you have not grieved with these families. I teach the 10 and 11-year-olds in primary. And this is tragic. And it is a moment of reflection. Are we doing everything that we can? Are we doing the best we can? Do you know that there are more mandates for what we serve for school lunch than there are for how to keep our school kids safe? That shouldn't be happening that way. It is time that we address this issue. And we can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can make sure through federal regulations that the databases are up to date and secure, that when a background check is done, that the federal crimes committed are reported in that database, and we are keeping firearms out of the hands of criminals. We must address mental health issues. It is a crisis here in America. We have to start dealing with that. And we can still protect the rights of legal gun owners just like me.
Blake Moore.
Yeah, this obviously hits incredibly close. I dropped my twins off at school the very next day. Kindergarten teacher was bawling. This hits every single American. I can't even though, as much as it does, it hits all of us, I can't even imagine how it's hitting that community. The representative that's over Texas 23 is one of my best friends in Congress. He's one of the best individuals, good-natured people I know, Representative Gonzalez, and he's giving his whole effort to do this. He's even starting to propose real legislation that can come out of this. Even with all that emotion, I'm very proud to be the only person on this stage that's supported by the Second Amendment groups. I'm proud of my record. I would vote the exact same way that I would, that I already have. Because H.R. 8 and H.R. 1446, these don't get at the issue, right? When I was introduced to the 21st Century Fix NICS Act, H.R. 1518, I jumped right on. That actually enhances and actually makes this process more secure, and then it enhances it, and it's a good, solid solution that can go towards this. We add on the stop violence, so that's going to enhance our school ability to be able to set up proper protocols and prevent themselves. And then you also just have mental health. This is a topic that gets thrown around a lot, and we have a major mental health issue going on. I see it with youth that I mentor and that I get involved with, and we have to be able to come up with solutions, and it has to be all-encompassing.
Andrew Badger.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what the other candidates said. I mean, we saw the face of evil, not just in Texas, but around the country, in Buffalo and other places. And it's heartbreaking. It goes out to these families who are suffering right now. But we can't let the left try to weaponize politically to score an advantage on these tragedies. The reality is evil exists, and they're going to find a way, evil people are going to find a way to kill others. That's what we saw happen in Wisconsin. And so we can't allow the left to try to undermine our fundamental rights. I would support legislation which would address help address the mental health issue, which have an epidemic across this country. We also need to harden our schools. You know, we need to have armed guards at our schools. We need to have single-point entries. We need to make sure that these doors are locked. We need to have a lot of veterans in this country. I'm sure a lot of them would be willing to go and serve at these schools. I mean, a lot of the money we're spending abroad could be used here at home in paying for these armed guards at our schools and protecting our own children. And again, we can't let the left try to weaponize this tragedy. And repealing the Second Amendment, trying to take away our God-given rights, is not going to solve this problem. Our Second Amendment is about defending our lives, our families. It's about defending against government tyranny and overreach. And we have to make sure that we stand firm and not cave to the left on this issue, because they're going to try to use these tragedies to take an inch and then they'll go a mile. And we have to stand firm. And so I think what we've seen across this country is evil, and we have to be prepared to fight back against it.
We're going to go now to 1-minute closing statements. It was determined randomly that Blake Moore would go first.
Thank you. Yeah, and thank you. Appreciate the conversation today. Look, ever since taking office, I have made a strong focus on substance over artistry. Utahns, we've always been about substance. And, you know, Americans are starting to see what we've seen all along. Right? Conservative principles, they will drive upward mobility. They will drive energy independence. They will drive strength on the world stage. liberal policies, and if you could just compare what took place in 2017 versus now, liberal policies, gas prices, inflation, weakens us on the world stage. It's as simple as that. And there is some optimism that comes with this to know that Americans are recognizing it. And they have given what President Biden has flat out earned, his low approval rating. We need to take that. We need to go and make sure we win back the majority in this fall. I will spend my summer, my fall, completely focused on making sure that we are able to do that. I humbly ask for your vote to be able to go and see that through.
Andrew Badger is next.
Our country is in a state of crisis, and our current representatives aren't acting like it. The question before us today is not necessarily one of goals, it's of means. Do we take the Mike Lee America First approach and defund this government if necessary to remove illegal things like the vaccine mandate? Or do we throw our hands in the air and say we're the minority government? There's nothing we can do. The question before you, the voter, is, are you satisfied with the direction of our country? Do you believe our current representatives are doing everything they can to fight for your freedoms? I believe that we don't have to settle for the status quo. Utah is a land of pioneers. We're entrepreneurs, we're ranchers, we're cowboys, and we're fighters. And now is the time to stand up and fight back to save our country. Not just for us, but for our children, so that we can hand them the gift of our nation better than the one that we were given. That is what we're fighting for. That is our aim, that is our goal, and that is what I ask for your support in. I believe freedom will win. I believe we can do this. God bless Utah. God bless the United States of America.
And finally, Tina Cannon.
Thank you, Thomas, and thank you for both of you being here today. I'm going to end this where I began it. I'm running for Congress in the 1st Congressional District because this is my home. I've spent 54 years knowing these issues, knowing these industries backwards and forwards. I know you, and you know me. And you know that you can trust me to represent you because I've experienced these issues with you. I know the farmers, the ranchers, the dairymen by name. I know the people who've made Hill Air Force successful by name. I know the small businesses that are suffering by name. I know you, and I know how to represent you in Congress. And I know that because of my background, I will be able to hit the ground running, to be able to turn these issues around quickly, because I've spent my life studying federal government and how it works and how we can turn this around. I ask for your vote. Go to my website, tinacannon.com, and join our fight for real representation for the 1st District. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the candidates for participating in our debate today. We'd also like to thank doTERRA International for sponsoring our primary debates. Utah's primary election is June 28th. If you're an active registered voter, you should start receiving your ballot in the mail next week. You can check on your status or learn more at the elections website at vote.utah.gov. On behalf of the Utah Debate Commission, I'm Thomas Wright. Thank you for joining us.
That again was a rebroadcast of this afternoon's 1st Congressional District debate with candidates incumbent Congressman Blake Moore, Republican challenger Tina Cannon, and Republican challenger Andrew Badger. If you are just tuning in and missed that, it will be available as part of our podcast, and you can also watch the debate. These were televised as well. That video stream available at cachevalleydaily.com. But now stay tuned. I'm currently watching the countdown clock here with just 3 minutes to go for what will be the only United States Senate Republican primary debate. In this debate, in this race, there are 3 candidates. Incumbent Senator Mike Lee, challenger Republican Becky Edwards, and Republican Allie Isom. Senator Lee, however, has declined to take part in this specific debate. So Republican candidates Becky Edwards and Allie Isom will take the stage here in just a few minutes. This is, of course, going to be broadcast live here on KVNU. You can also watch the debate via the link I've shared on our Facebook page, or that you can find on the homepage at cachevalleydaily.com. So again, you can go back and rewatch the video of that 1st Congressional District debate we're just wrapping up here at cachevalleydaily.com. And in just a minute, under a minute, You can actually watch the video of the United States Senate debate, also at CacheValleyDaily.com. We'll be broadcasting it live here, the Utah Debate Commission's United States Senate Republican primary debate, coming up in just under a minute here on KVNU Logan.